We continue now at the top of Daf Chavdalin Amud Beis Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 24b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara is in the middle of asking questions on the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says that you're not allowed to purchase an animal from a non-Jew and use that animal for a carbon because of the concern that the non-Jew engaged in bestiality with the animal. And so the Gemara now is in the middle of asking from Yisro. Yisro brought karbanos, and the Gemara says, well, Yisro was before Matan Torah. But the Gemara says, well, that's good according to the one who says that the episode of Yisro took place before Matan Torah. But according to the one who says Yisro la'achar Matan Torah have, according to the one who says that the episode with Yisro took place after Matan Torah, again, that is a machlokus. So then, Michael Amemra, what are you going to say? How is it that Yisro was offering these? How is it that Yisro was offering these karbanos? And the Gemara answers, Ela Yisro mi Yisrael zav. And rather, we'll just say that Yisro bought it from a Jewish person, and that's how he was able to offer these karbanos. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, the following proof. This is a pasuk in Sefer Shmuel. It says, Vayomer Shol me'amaleki haviyam asher chamal ha'am al meitav hatzon va'bakar. It says that Shol says that the offerings, the karbanos, are brought from the animals. They were bought from the Amalekim. They were brought from non-Jews. So you see again, against Rabbi Eliezer, Laman Zavoach LaHashem Elokech, and it says that was in order to sacrifice to Hashem. And the Gemara says to that, no, my meitav, what does it mean the best? It doesn't mean the best animals. It means the may meitav. They took the animals, the best animals, and they sold those animals, and they used the money to purchase other animals for karbanos. The Gemara says, according to that, umayshna meitav, but according to that, what does it have to be the best animals? Just get any animals from the non-Jews, sell them, and use the money. And the Gemara says to that, kihechi delikvatz alei and zivina. They wanted the best animals because those are easier to find buyers. Rashi explains, "Demei meitav lemochran veliknos bedemeyan behemos mi Yisrael lahakriv." They sold these animals and then they used the money to buy animals from Jews in order to offer those. And the Gemara continues and says, Tashma, coming here, another proof. Again, this is a proof in terms of against Rabbi Eliezer. This is a pasuk also in Sefer Shmuel. It says, Vayomer Aravna el David yikach v'yal. It says, V'yal Adoni HaMelech hatov be'enov roh habakar la'olav hamorigim uchle habakar la'etzim. And so it says over here that it seems to be that Aravna was saying to David HaMelech, my master should bring these animals as karbanos. And so therefore, again, these animals are being received from a non-Jew. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Rav Nachman says, Aravna ger toshav haya, that Aravna, he was a ger toshav, and therefore there was no concern. Rashi explains, Aravna Yevusi haya b'Sefer Shmuel. He was a Yevusi in Sefer Shmuel. Ra habakar liola, and again the pasuk says it actually is re'ei habakar laola. It says, see the animals as an ola. Alma hikriv David behemas over kochavim lekarban. So you see that David HaMelech, he brought these animals as karbanos, and this is from an Oved Kochavim, this is from an idol worshiper. And the Gemara says, no, Ger Toshav, he was actually a Ger Toshav, he was a resident Ger, a resident convert, which means Shekibel Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he accepted the Zion Mitzvahs of B'nai Noach, V'harei Raviyah Bechlal, one of them that includes bestiality, and so therefore there was no concern of bestiality in that particular case. And the Gemara continues, my Morigim, what is the reference to Morigim in this pasuk? Again, this is the pasuk in Sefer Shmuel with Aravna. Morigim is generally like farm tools. What's the reference over there? Amar Ula says Mita Shel Torbel. It refers to Mita Shel Torbel. The Gemara says, my Mita Shel Torbel. What's Mita Shel Torbel? The Gemara says to that, Iza de Korkasa de Daishan. It's referring to a serrated board that was used for threshing. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef says, my crow. Where do we see in the pasuk that that's what it means? It says that the word morag is used in that fashion, and the Gemara brings a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Hine samtich lemorag chorutz chodesh bal pipios tadosh harim v'saduk. It talks about tadosh harim, you're threshing. You see that it's used for threshing. It says v'saduk ugvos kamotz tasim. It says it's going to thresh the mountains. It's going to make them like chaff, and so therefore you see from that pasuk again that's what morag is referring to. Rashi explains, Torbel Iza de Kurkasa, Daf Gadol V'Avmo, this is a large, thick board, V'racham and wide, V'taraf B'Pegimos Harbe, it's serrated, it has a lot of sharp areas, L'rochvo Amukos, these are deep along its width, Techufo Zu, Eitzeldu, the Zu, one right next to each other, V'doshen Botzvot, this board is used to thresh grain, Shemavir Olav HaBehemos, V'Hapegimos, Nechnasos B'dayish, V'Atvu Nechvetes, the animals, you pass the grain through over here, and it goes through the serrated areas, and that's how you're able to thresh. Lemora choretz taraf bepigimos vein pipios, the same idea over there in the pasuk that was brought from Sefer Yeshayahu. Again, the idea was you're threshing the mountains. Tadush Harim Alma Ladisha Avdila. You see that this particular tool was used for threshing. And the Gemara continues. Meisvei, we have another question on Rabbi Eliezer. The pasuk says also in Sefer Shmuel V'esa Paros Helu Ola LaHashem. It says they brought the paros as Ola to Hashem, and that was talking from the Plishtim. So again, also from the non-Jews. And the Gemara says Horas Shah. I said that was Horas Shah, meaning to say it was a ruling just for that time. It does not apply in any other time. Rashi explains, V'esaparos ba'anshe Beis Shemesh Mishtoi. This was by the people of Beis Shemesh. Mishtoi Kra, that's what the pasuk is talking about. But paros, sheviu ha'aron me'eretz Plishtim. This is these are talking about the cows that they brought the aron from the land of the Plishtim. That's what was happening over there. The aron was being returned. And Horas Shah, that was Horas Shah. That was actually a miracle that happened at that time through them. Sheviu ha'aron me'atzman. They were able to bring the aron on their own, meaning the animals brought the aron on their own. Ve'ein ish manhigam, without any person leading them. Even though their offspring, they were locked up in the house. And they didn't follow after their children. Instead, they were able to rather they were able to bring it. V'amru shira, and then they sang shira, as we're going to say later on. And the Gemara continues and says, Hachinami mistaber. It actually makes sense to say that it was a Horas Shah over there. The ilote machi, because if you don't say that, Ola nekeva miika, it says paros, which is feminine. Would you bring an Ola that's a nekeva? Generally speaking, an Ola is a male animal, it's not a female animal. But the Gemara says, Umay kosher, but is that really a difficulty? Dilma bebamas yachin, maybe over there, we were talking there, it was not being brought in the Beis HaMikdash, it was being brought on an individual's altar. And so over there, actually, it could be a female. It's like Ravada Barava said, the Yamar Ravada Barava, because Ravada Barava said, Minayin la'ola nekeva shi kashera. How do we know that an Ola that is a female is kosher bebamas yachid on an individual's altar? Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayigach Shmuel telech cholav echad. It says that Shmuel took a telech cholav, which we're understanding that that's female as well. Vayaleu Ola, and it says that he brought it as an Ola, and so you see that on a bamas yachid, it's okay. But the Gemara says, 1 second, that's not really a proof either. Vaya'alehu zachar mashma, because the word Vaya'alehu, in that pasuk of Vayikach Shmuel telech cholav echad, that pasuk which says that he brought telech cholav echad, it says Vaya'alehu, which sounds like it was a male animal. The Gemara says, no, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, even though we read it as Vaya'alehu, but Vaya'aleha ksiv, it's written without the vav at the end, so it sounds like Vaya'aleha, it sounds like, again, it's talking about a female animal. And Rashi explains, Dilma bebamas yachid, it's no proof from the fact that the animal was a female, because maybe it was a bamas yachid is different, because maybe by bamas yachid shari, maybe it's permitted to bring a female ola. The hasam bamas yachid havai, over there, that was a bamas yachid, it was an individual's altar. The bama gedola benov haisa, over there, there was a bama gedola, that was a large bama that was for the public, but that was in Nov, ba'os Shah at that time, that was in the city of Nov, kashanilkach ha'aron, when the aron was taken, v'charav mishkan Shiloh, that's when the mishkan Shiloh was destroyed, ubo lahen lenov, and then they brought it to Nov, and so therefore, if we're talking over there about a bamas yachid, it would be no proof from the fact that it was a female, that it was a Horas Shah. That wouldn't necessarily be a proof. We could still say it was a Horas Shah, but again, there's no proof from the fact that the animal was female. And the Gemara said, I'll prove that by a bamas yachid you could bring a female animal, because it says telei cholav. What does it mean telei cholav? A sheep that's cholav means to say Rachel umeinika espana. It means to say it's nursing its offspring. Therefore, you see that it's a female. And so again, the Gemara then said, well, it says vaya'alehu. That sounds like a male. The Gemara said, no, it's vaya'aleha ksiv. And so therefore, again, not necessarily a proof that it's a Horas Shah from the fact that it was a female. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Gevul Yeshla, there's actually a boundary. Pechusami bas gimel shanim ne'akeres, if the animal is less than 3 years old, it becomes sterile. If it engages in bestiality, this is talking about if a man sodomizes a female animal. But bas gimel shanim, but if it's already 3 years old or older, eina ne'akeres, so then it is not going to become sterile. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, this is going all the way back to the question from the Brisa earlier. Again, we said earlier that there's a concern of bestiality when you're getting an animal from a non-Jew, or when you're leaving an animal by a non-Jew, but the problem is that the Brisa says you're allowed to purchase an animal for a non-Jew to be a carbon. That's the question we've been dealing with all along, and Rabbi Yochanan is giving another answer. That which we said earlier in the Brisa, you can buy from them an animal to be a carbon. It's not true across the board for all animals. That's what it means. Gevul Yeshla, there's a boundary. That Brisa, which gave that permissibility, was only talking about specific animals, and again, specifically animals under the age of 3. If the animal is less than 3 years old, it's going to become sterile if a man sodomizes the female animal. Therefore, you could purchase such a young animal from an Oved Kochavim because the Oved Kochavim didn't want to damage that animal, and therefore that actually is okay to purchase from the Oved Kochavim for karbonos. Aval bas shalosh, but once the animal is 3 years old, shuv eina nekeres, it no longer becomes sterile. V'chayshin l'revi, and in that case, we would actually be concerned for sodomy. We would be concerned for bestiality. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei kolhani tiyufta, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we ask all of these questions, these refutations that we brought from the various psukim. Rashi explains, Kolhani tiyufta dahani kroi, all of these psukim, desharu behemos oved kochavim lakrav, all these psukim seem to imply that animals from non-Jews are okay to offer as karbonos, and shani lu, pchusmi bas gimel shanim. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we can give a simple answer. We'll simply answer that all of these psukim, all of these proofs and refutations are talking about animals under 3 years old. That's why there was no concern. The Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof from the pasuk. Again, we brought earlier, V'yasa paros helu ola laHashem. It says they brought the paros as ola to Hashem. Again, that was by the plishtim, by the returning of the Aron. And again, we can answer b'pchusa mibas shaloshan, and we're talking again when it's younger than 3 years old. Ma'asgif lo Rav Huna Breder of Nasan. Rav Huna Breder of Nasan asks on that in Cain, if so, Hainu ves b'neihem kalu b'bayis. You can't give that answer over there. We mentioned this earlier because over there it said that the offspring of these animals that were bringing the Aron, they were locked up in the house, and so apparently how did they have offspring? It must be that they were 3. The Gemara says, in less than 3 years old, is it possible for an animal to give birth? Again, we're talking here about animals that clearly had given birth, so you can't give the answer that older than 3 years old. Vatanan, but we learned in a Mishnah, para v'chamor, this is a Mishnah in Bechoros, para v'chamor mibas gimel, vaday l'kohen, when you have a par nechamor, if it's 3 years old and older, then certainly it goes to the, if it's mibas gimel rather, if it's 3 years old and younger, so then we say it certainly goes to the Kohen. Mikan va'elach suffik, but from there onward, it's actually considered to be a suffik if it's older than 3. The whole idea over here is that older than 3, the idea of the Mishnah, as we'll see in a moment, is that older than 3, it's able to give birth. Less than 3, it's not able to give birth. And so therefore you cannot answer the question from Sefer Shmuel, in terms of the returning of the Aron, you cannot answer that those animals were less than 3, because clearly they had given birth. And so the Gemara says, Ela machvar to kedushan and mekar. Rather, you have to go back to the answers that we gave earlier. And Rashi explains, para v'chamor, again, if you have a cow and a donkey, mibas gimel, then it goes to the Kohen. Bebechoros, this is a Mishnah in Bechoros. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah over there, halokeach behema min hanochri. Let's say a person purchases an animal from a nachish, from a non-Jew. Ve'eno yodeya im kavar bochrim lav. And the issue over here is you don't know if the animal already gave birth, was there a firstborn or not, while it was by the nachri. So eiz bas shenasa vadei l'kohen. So let's say you have an eiz, you have a goat, it's just a year old, certainly goes to the Kohen. Mikan va'elach suffik, but if it's older than that, it's a suffik. And para v'chamor, when it comes to a para and a chamor, so bas shalosh, then it goes by 3 years old. Vadei l'kohen, that certainly goes to the Kohen, meaning vlad rishon sheteled b'yad Yisrael, meaning let's say this animal that you bought from the non-Jew, and we're talking about a situation where it's 3 years old or younger, and so then it gives birth, and then later on it gives birth to an animal. So then im zachru vadei l'kohen, if it gives birth to a male, that male animal has to go to a Kohen. Im eina yiseira be'es leidas al bas shalosh, if at the time of the birth it's not more than 3, devadei lo yolda bebeis nachri, because then at that point in time, certainly it had not given birth in the house of the nachri. So the point over here is, this animal certainly, since it's so young, when it was by the nachri, it did not give birth in the house of the nachri, so it gives birth with the Yisrael, we assume that to be a firstborn. Mikan va'elach, but from then onward, meaning im yaseira al bas shalosh haisa kashe yolda bebeis Yisrael, let's say it's more than 3 years old when it gives birth in the house of the Yisrael, have a valdezes suffik b'chor, then we have a suffik, maybe it was a firstborn animal, maybe not. V'ikol amemer kvar bochra bebeis oved kochavim, could be it already gave birth to a firstborn in the house of the oved kochavim. V'ikol amemer lo bochra zeh bebeis oved kochavim, it could be that didn't happen. V'zeh b'chor shalom, maybe this is the firstborn animal. V'yira b'chor zeh atshi stuv, so what do you do in that situation? You have to just let this b'chor graze until it develops a blemish. Sharei eno roy l'karbon, because you can't bring it as a sacrifice. Shema ein zeh b'chor, maybe this is not a firstborn. Well, achar sheyesh bo mum yochlenu ba'olav, now once it gets a blemish, the owner can already eat the animal. You don't have to give it to a Kohen. V'lo yidnenu l'kohen sheb'chor ba'al mum muter l'zarim, because a b'chor that has a blemish, a non-Kohen is allowed to eat it. Ve'ein vo ela mishum gezelas manas kuna. The only issue is maybe it really belongs to the Kohen, maybe you're stealing from the Kohen. Afiluhu vadai v'zeu safek, even if it's a vadai, here it's a doubt. Have a kohen motzi mechaver of all of arayah. So here the kohen has to bring proof that it really belongs to the kohen. If he doesn't have proof, then it stays with the owner. Shelo yolda bebeis oved kochavim. He'd have to bring proof that there was no birth in the house of the oved kochavim. And Rashi continues, v'gabe safek peter chamor. Let's say you had a safek by a donkey, so it's a firstborn donkey. So by a firstborn donkey in general, you separate a sheep. So ma'afresh of tlela hatiro bahana. So you'll do the same over here. You'll separate a sheep to make it mutter bahana. T'chsif tifte beset, as you redeem it with a sheep. V'atzla ya'akev latzmo. He can keep the sheep for himself. T'afilu vadai peter, again, even if it was for sure firstborn by peter chamor, ein kedusha chola al tle hanitan elam mishum gezelas kohen. There's no kedusha. It's just a question of stealing from the kohen. Yesh, that's the only issue. V'kevan shu safek afilu gezeleka. If it's a doubt, it's not even considered stealing. Deraya ala kohen, because it's the kohen who has to bring the proof. And kalu babayis, again, it says that they were locked up in the house, the offspring, lashon beis hakela, like being imprisoned. Lishna achrin, another way to understand kalu babayis is lashon minia. They're refraining, they're holding them back. They held them back from walking after them. And we will point out over here that when the Gemara says machvarta kedishanan meikar, we go back to the earlier answers. It's not necessarily a rejection of Rabbi Yochanan's answer. It could be Rabbi Yochanan is correct that animals under 3, there's no concern for bestiality. The Gemara simply means to say that in the episode with the Plishtim, those particular animals which clearly were over 3, we have to go back to the answer we gave earlier, that it was a horas shah. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The pasuk says, again, this is by the episode of the returning of the Aron. The pasuk says, "Vayisharna haparos b'derech al derech beis shemesh." It says that the animals, now Vayisharna literally means that they went straight, they went on the road. And the Gemara says, "Ma'ay Vayisharna." But what does it mean Vayisharna? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Sha'amru shira. What it means is that they said song, meaning to say the paros, the cows, they sang songs of praise. Rav Zutra Bar Tovia Amar Rav, and Rav Zutra Bar Tovia says that Rav says Sheyishru Paneim Keneged Aron V'Amru Shira, that they turned their faces towards the Aron and they sang songs of praise. And the Gemara says Umay Shira Amru. Now what songs did they say? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Oz Yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael. They said the Oz Yashir. Rabbi Yochanan Didei Amar, and Rabbi Yochanan himself says they said the following: Va'amartem Bayomahu Hodu LaHashem Kiru B'Shmo. That's what they said. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar, and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says Mizmora Yasma. They said the orphaned Mizmor, which is Mizmor Shiru LaHashem Shir Chadash Kiniflos Asa Hoshia Lo Yemino Zra Kadsho. It's orphaned because it's not identifying exactly who was the one that said it. Rabbi Lazar says Hashem Molech Yir Gezuamim. What they said was the parak in Tehillim of Hashem Molech Yir Gezuamim. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Hashem Molech Geyus Lavesh. They said over Hashem Molech Geyus Lavesh. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Amar, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha said they didn't say any particular psukim in Tehillim. Rather, they said as follows: Roni Roni Hashita, sing acacia. That's referring to the acacia tree. Hisnovafi Barov Hadarech, ascend in all of your glory. Hamichushekes berik meizav, overlaid with golden embroidery. Hamihulala b'dvir armon, exalted by the book of the palace. Umifawara ba'adei adayim, and magnificent with jewels. And this is a reference to the Aron, because again it's talking about something from Shita, something from wood, which is adorned with rik meizav, which is embroidered with gold. And the Gemara continues, Ravashi Masni Lo Lahad Rabbi Yitzchak Ahar. Ravashi, he teaches this above of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafla, this Roni Hashita. It goes on the following. The pasuk says, Vayi ben Soha Aron Vayomer Moshe Kuma Hashem. It says that Vayi ben Soha Aron, that when the Aron traveled, so Moshe said Kuma Hashem, and Yisrael Mayamra. What did the Yisrael say at that time? And on that, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Roni Hashita V'chulu. Again, the same Roni Hashita that we quoted above. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav says, Keman Karu Parsoi L'Sifra Devir. According to whom do the Persians refer to a sefer, a book, as a Devir? Why do they call a book a Devir? Mehachatz from here, it's from the following pasuk. There's a pasuk in Sefer Shoftim. It says, V'shem Devir Lefanim Kiryas Sefer. It says the area of Devir. It earlier used to be called Kiryas Sefer. Sefer is a book. And so Devir is referred to as a book. And the Gemara continues, the Masoras Hashas changes this to Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, because Ravashi is not arguing on the above, it's a new statement. Keman Karu Parsoi L'Nida Deshtana. According to whom do the Persians refer to a nida as Deshtana? Mehachetz from here, from the following pasuk, Ki derech noshim li. This is talking about Rachel. She says it's derech noshim is upon me. She's talking about the fact that she's a nida, and derech noshim sounds like dishtana, and that's why they refer to it as dishtana. And Rashi explains, Vayishrena oz yasher, the reason why they would sing oz yasher, ki go'o go'o l'shloach yad beplishtim, uvedagon Elohem, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he attacked the plishtim and their god Dagon, and Yasma, the orphaned mizmor, shalo huzkar shem omer, the name of the person who said it is not mentioned, and yirgazu, if they were singing the Hashem Molech, yirgazu amim, al shahikam v'makas techorim, that refers to the fact that the plishtim were struck with the plague, and Hashita, the Shita referred to as Aron Atzei Shitim, the Aron was made from acacia wood. And Rashi continues, Berik mei zav, it's embroidered with gold, mitzupa zav tar mi bayis u'michutz. Again, there was pure gold on the outside and the inside, around the wood of the aron. Hamuhulola b'dvir armon, what is that referring to? Sefer Torah shel Moshe b'socho. That refers to the fact that the Sefer Torah is in the aron. The aron muhulol u'mefoar by Mesha b'socho, so the aron is glorified by that which is within it. And Devir, again, who's Sefer b'lashon Parsi, Devir refers to a book in Persian. V'Yisrael my amru, and what did Klal Yisrael say? Bin soa ha'aron beis hamasos, when the aron traveled. Shebemidbar shahaya Moshe omer kuma Hashem, u'ma Yisrael onen acharav, because Moshe would say kuma Hashem. What did Klal Yisrael answer after him? And finally, Dashtana nutrikon dalid derech and shin noshim. Again, it comes from derech noshim. We have that word, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Hey Amud Aleph.